The risk management lifecycle is something that I think you need to know in depth as well. And you need to know it because it is such an integral part of what we do. And if you remember, a risk equals threat times vulnerability. If we just have the vulnerability and there's no threat, it is not a risk. If there's a threat but no vulnerability, it's also not a risk. And a vulnerability is just a weakness in one of our applications, our infrastructure. Somewhere in our layer of defense, there's a weakness. Now, if no one can exploit that weakness, it doesn't really matter. There has to be a threat. That means that the vulnerability is exploitable, and that would be exploited by a threat actor. So when we have a threat and we have the vulnerability, then we have a risk. And as the name indicates, that's something we need to manage. And I'm going to spend a little more time on the risk management lifecycle. First off, because it's important. You need to know this not just for the certification, but also for your job. But on top of that, ISACA has an entire certification just focused on risk management called CRISC, Certified in Risk and Information System Control. Since they built an entire certification around risk management, obviously it's important, but I would think it is also more important on ISACA certifications over some of the other certifications. And as with many other things in IT security, risk management is an iterative process, meaning we do a full cycle and then we start over. We're never done because both our environment and the threat landscape is fluid. We might add systems, we might add servers, we might add different things to our environment, and for everything we have, we will go through the risk management lifecycle. ISACA uses 4 phases. You may see other places where they use 5. I don't think the number of phases really matter. You're not going to get a question on phase 3, we do this. And the flow both on the ISACA model and any of the other models is pretty much the same. Phase 1, risk identification. Obviously, we need to know the risk is there. Then we do risk assessment. How bad is the risk? What are the possible impacts? Then we go to risk response and mitigation. How do we want to react to this risk? What can we do to mitigate the risks that are big enough? And the final phase, risk and control monitoring and reporting. And as I mentioned, this is iterative. In this lecture, we're going to cover risk identification, and in a later lecture, we'll cover the other 3 phases. And if you're familiar with PMI's project management methodology and life cycle, then you know the first phase, initiation, is where we identify our team, and we identify team members from across the enterprise. If we have too narrow a scope of stakeholders, we might miss some of the big risks. So we need someone from the entire enterprise, and we need someone who's allowed to make decisions. We're not okay with them just sending someone random because they have to. And once we have the team assembled, then we will figure out the scope, just like we do in project management. What is in scope and what is out of scope? What are we doing the risk assessment on? Is it a single department? Is it the entire enterprise? What type of assets? What type of threats? And having that completely clearly defined scope is going to help us be successful. If the scope is vague, how will we ever know if we're done? And then we need to choose the methods we're going to use for a risk assessment. And that could be quantitative or qualitative risk analysis, or both. And we're going to cover these in depth in the next chapter. And qualitative, as you can hear, comes from quality. It is your opinion. It is not hard, substantial facts. We rate all the assets we have on how critical they are or how bad it is if we're compromised, and then we rate the likeliness. And then the quantitative, which you can hear quantity, it's a number. That is where that on the risks that are deemed high enough, we go in and we put numbers on the feelings. And this will take a lot of work. And in many places, we don't always do the quantitative risk analysis, or we'll only do it on a few of our assets, because it does take so much time and it does take so much effort to do it right. Then we pick the tools we want to use. What are we going to use to analyze the risk we have? And there are some great tools out there, but again, you need to do your due diligence before you buy the tool, because you need to find the one that actually matches your environment, your enterprise. And since we obviously have senior management's buy-in, they think the process and they think what we're doing is a great idea and something that the enterprise needs, we also understand very clearly what are the acceptable risk levels and what is the risk appetite of the business. And the risk appetite is set by senior management. the part of risk identification that's going to take the most work is identifying our assets, and those are both the tangible and the intangible objects. And tangible just means something you can touch. That is our equipment, our facility, all the physical things that we have that make us function as a business. And then the intangible ones, that's the stuff we cannot touch. That could be the data on our systems, our trade secrets, our reputation. If we take the example of a server, obviously the server is a tangible asset. We can touch it, we can feel it. The data on the server is not. So now that we have identified the server, we need to figure out how much is it worth. And obviously, we need to take into consideration, what did we pay for it? What is it going to cost us to get a new one? What did it cost us to make it ready for production? How important is it within our business? If that server was stolen, how much would it be worth to a competitor? How much money did we spend on maintaining and protecting the asset? Are we going to incur any financial losses because that server is no longer there? If it was our e-commerce web server and we now lose $10,000 a day because we cannot do e-commerce, that is a loss. And what if we have customer data on there? Is it protected well enough? What is that going to do, both financially if we get fined, but also for our reputation? If we didn't use the proper encryption, we might get fined $100,000. But losing this information would also make our customers very unhappy. Let's say we're a company that has $100 million revenue every year. If this breach costs us a drop in stock prices or a drop in customers, if we lose 20% of our business because our customers move their business elsewhere, well, that's a $20 million loss. So we need to take all this into consideration because the asset value is not just the asset itself. It is also all the other stuff that comes with losing an asset. And I think in most of the businesses I have worked in, they had an okay-ish asset inventory, but some of them had no clue which assets they had at all. They just bought new stuff every so often, but they never tracked anything. If you don't track it, how can you protect it? And as part of our risk identification, we also do a risk register, which we will cover in the next section, where we also cover quantitative and qualitative risk analysis.